Hi, I'm Fraser. I'm a 3D artist at Rivet Games, and just now I'm working on part of our Schaffhausen to Cruislingen route, which I'll be showing you a bit of today. I'll be showing you a bit about how we create base plates for our stations going along the route. The main station building is usually already made, and it will fall to someone else to place the station on the base plate later down the line. So this one just now we're working on, or is already finished, is Burlington, so I'll show you how we go about making these. We'll usually start with a kind of good quality image from Google Earth or Google Maps where we can see the surrounding area with the station in the middle. So there's quite a bit going on around this station in terms of there's a car park, there's other buildings, there's two different platforms here with crossings in the platforms and a level crossing just slightly further up. So after we've got our image from Google Earth and our scene, we'll probably bring in the building that was made beforehand for the station. So this one here is the basic building that we get in that someone else has built with a bit of a platform to support the building or to place it on. So we'll get our track and terrain from out the game engine and we'll import that in and get everything placed where it's supposed to be. So we can see the level the building is sitting at and how much ground there is around it and if we need to recreate any of that or smooth out anything that's there. When we bring the track from in the game, we get a load of stuff with it that we don't actually need for this stage. So things like wires, bits of hedge, other supporting geometry or anything that our route layers have put down, we don't need. So I'll usually spend a bit of time cleaning up this file. There's a lot of geometry in here that we can clean up as well, so I'll spend a bit of time making sure that this is optimized so that if I have to come back to this later, I know what's going on. So I'll take this complicated piece of track and geometry and roads and everything that we get out, and I'll get rid of everything I don't need until I just have a couple of sections like this that I'll then break up further into what I need. So once we have these and our station building in place, I'll usually get rid of this big piece of terrain because I'll probably recreate most of what's around the station building and I don't need this for the moment. So I'll get rid of that. We'll bring back our Google Maps image and everything roughly lines up where it needs to be. It's never going to be 100% correct because of image distortion with things like Google Maps, and our track has a slight variance for where it can be placed. Everything's roughly where it needs to be here. I know what I need to make. So once we've got everything cleaned up and we have the section of road and track that we're actually going to use, I'll hide this larger piece of terrain that the game gives us because I don't need this for the moment. Usually I'll end up recreating a large area of what's around the station building, so this kind of isn't needed for the moment. So I'm left with the station building that's already been modelled and a couple of sections of track and road for me to use as reference points when building terrain round about here. So when we're working on the platforms, I'll usually look at the Google Earth reference and see how long the platform is, and then separate an area of track that's that length. So I can use that as my basis for building a platform. So I'll take this section of track which I've separated, and it's going to be our basis for how long the platforms are. So I'll usually come in and grab a piece of the geometry and I'll separate it. Then what I can do is use this to create a new piece of geometry that is the exact length I need it to be, and it follows the edge of the track where we want the platform to meet, and eventually once I'm done with it, it will look like this. So these are the platforms for Burlington Station. So these platforms usually go through a bit of revision based on back and forward between ourselves and the route laying team, where some of it might need to change, textures might slightly vary depending on what it's actually like at the location. We'll use reference images to make sure we get as close as we can to the platform texture that's actually there. It's also important for us to make sure that the platform is as wide as where it needs to be and that passengers could actually walk along it, and that it matches up basically to what we have available in our references. So we can see here the platforms are pretty much where we need to be. Like I said, there can be slight variance based on where our track is placed, and also image distortion from Google Earth not having things where they're meant to be. So we'll move things very slightly where it needs to. So once we have our platforms in place where we need them to be, we'll bring back in our sections of track and our roads and stuff that are actually relevant to this platform, and we'll start to look at where we need to cover gaps, where we need the terrain to match up with our references. we can see the level of the terrain doesn't match up with the platform height that we need it to be at. It's a good deal lower. So what we then have to do is we'll build terrain to match up to the level of the building so that it's a smoother transition. So we can see in one of our reference images here for this building that on the side of the building here we have this door and a bit of pavement that slopes down very slightly. We can see there's a difference in height because this grey section of the building is higher at one end than it is at the other. So we know that the ground is sloping very slightly there. And if we look at the terrain the game gave us, the height of the terrain doesn't match up, so that's why this base plate has been built onto the building, and I'll then build a larger base plate to encompass all of this. So we can see here, like, the platform needs to be at this same height as this pavement, but it needs to gradually slope down just like this pavement here so that it's at the bottom of this building. So the piece of terrain that we ended up with just now for the version of the game we've currently got ready looks like this. And I mean, outside of the game, it kind of wouldn't make sense whatever you're seeing here because it relies on the rest of the geometry in game encompassing it, like the roads, to make it blend into the scene. So if we bring back in a couple of the roads and the sections of track that I separated for the game, we can see that this piece of pavement that I've built actually blends quite nicely with this section of road that curves around, and it meets up with the edge of the platform and the base of the building that's also been built. Over on the other side, we know there's a car park over here, so we build in a kind of larger, flatter area for that. But based on our references as well, we know there's also a section of grass and some bushes and hedges that go in here, so that's built separately, and it will sit there and will mask things like edges by placing other objects during the route laying. So the things like bushes and hedges and grass will be placed alongside this to give it a kind of better visual. So at this stage, a lot of the base plate for this station is coming together. We've got a better idea of what else would be required to get it finished off. One of the other things we'll do at this stage is include things like station signage. Station signage is very important in terms of getting things like branding and font sizes and things correct, because it'll be a company's brand and we want to make sure that we're showing that as it actually is. So this station has two different signs. It has more kind of traditional Swiss Railway sign showing the station name with the SBB logo on it as well. What it also has is a slightly older sign on the side of the building here that we'll need to make. So we'll catch things like this at this stage and we'll come in and we'll place these signs. So this one's not been finished yet, but I'll probably do that myself and then come in and place this sign here and another one on the reverse side of the building where it is as well. So how we do station signage varies depending on the style of the sign and any imagery that's involved in it. So for these SBB Swiss Railway logos, we'll have a Photoshop texture set up with most of the station names we need, making sure that the font is correct, that they're all placed equal distances from the signs, and basically make sure that there is a set format for how the station names are done. So this is just a section of the station names. We actually have another texture as well because we couldn't fit them all into this one without compromising the orientation or the format of a couple of them. So we'll have this set up and then a very generic station sign piece of geometry, and what it allows us to do is just use this one sign model, but we'll come in and change the texture by just taking a piece of the model, we'll come in, grab this UV island, and we can just slide that down. And once we've got that lined up, that's another station name pretty much good to go. If it comes to this stage and we realise that the sign's not quite long enough, we can just grab these edges and we can bring this along to where we need it to be. So the station signs usually have a bit of extra space at the end, so we'll double check this when we come to placing a sign, but something like this is fairly standard, and we'll come in and then we can export that sign and get it placed at the building that it needs to be at. baseplate model like this is a fairly average size one. A lot of the time these can be significantly bigger, and they can be taking up almost kind of double or triple the length of this section of track. It really just depends on what the surrounding geography is like for it. But other things that we do like to include on a model of this kind of length is level crossings that are near it, because what it means is if someone comes in to place this base plate, the level crossing just slightly further down the track is included in it, and it saves someone else having to come along later and make this one smaller model and then place it here. It's just included as part of a larger whole, and it makes it a cleaner setup. So how we construct the level crossings is very similar to the rest of the terrain. We'll take a section of track from inside the game. So this is the generic track as it comes out for what's been placed, and like I said before, you can see it's very there's a lot of geometry going on here. There's a lot of things I don't need to make this, so I'll take this and I'll clean it up until I have something like this where the gap between the roads for the level crossing is. I'll come in and clean it up until I have a section of road and a section of track like this, and I know that this is where the level crossing has to be. And we end up with something like this, where we take this kind of straight section of road, we cut it out, we then we slice into the geometry so that we've got an area for the track to go through, and then we'll build into that these kind of platform crossings, and we'll texture them as well so that we've got something fairly realistic to what it's like in real life. So while we're making the base plates, we're constantly going back and forward with our route laying team so that we can make sure that what we're building on our end matches up with how the terrain has been laid out, because the terrain is subject to change. Things like road levels can go up or down. The terrain might need smoothed out. They might decide they need us to build more. They might decide we need to build less. So it's a constant back and forward between the two teams, and we'll come in and we'll look at what has been built. We'll make sure that it looks right, it merges into the scene, nothing sticks out as being out of place. So you can see here, this one's come together pretty well for the moment. It is subject to change. We can see things like these level crossings down here have been put in as well. The terrain merges quite nicely once we come along here. We can see that it meets up with the road, and it doesn't look like it's out of place at all. You can see this car park. It's been placed by our route layers as well as like the bushes and terrain. So a good example of the back and forward between the two teams is we've put our platform in here, but this shelter has already been placed and it doesn't quite sit where we need it to. So this is a decision that happens quite often, where we decide, is it easier for the route laying team to fix this or for it to be fixed on a 3D model? This is a quick fix for someone on the route laying team to make, where they can just grab this shelter and they can just bring it forward slightly. Changing things on the 3D model potentially, in this case it wouldn't require changing textures, but quite often it can, and it would be a much quicker fix to do it for the level designers. Other things as well are pieces of grass that have been placed here that are kind of auto-generated. So once we've come in and we've put in this concrete car park, they'll come in, they'll take out sections of grass that we don't need because they've kind of got no place here. So for now, my part in the base plate is more or less finished until a level designer has come in and looked at this area and decided if anything else needs to change, or if something's just not quite how we want it to be. We might take certain liberties with placements of like roads and things like that, and it might require things to be moved slightly. So for now, I would pass this off to one of our route layers or level designers, and then they'll give me feedback based on what I've done, and from there it'll either get signed off on and move on from there, and I'll move on to the next base plate, or this could get passed back to me with feedback and we'll change it and get it to where it needs to be.